welcome back. Today we're going to work on the Husqvarna 435, and this is the saw that needed a carb kit. And I do have the carb kit. It's an aftermarket carb kit. So let's get started on that. Just a Phillips screwdriver for these screws here. I think if you remember from the last video on this saw, we took it apart and found that the diaphragm was stiff and papery. Yep. No good there. So go ahead and get all this stuff popped off, cleaned up. That came off nice. Not a whole lot of cleanup to do. It doesn't happen often. All right. Let's get this opened up. Come on, get out of there. So just take your old stuff, compare it to the new stuff, just to make sure that everything is right. So it's got all the same holes in it. So it looks like all that's going to match up fine. My big belly. And it also has the low profile button in the middle of it. So this does seem to be the right one. All right. I also like to do my carburetors on a white paper towel. That way I can see everything. If I drop something, it stands out. Come on now. Alright, so on this carb here, typically you would take the diaphragm off one side, flip the carburetor, and take off the back side and remove your fuel pump assembly, but that's all on the same spot. So once you take this top cover off, you flip it upside down, and there's a screw here. You take that screw out. And then separate the two halves there. And now you have your pump assembly and your screen. We're going to match that up, see what it's like. And they do appear to be the same. I don't see anything different about them. So we're good there. And then get our gasket popped off of here. And they came off pretty clean. That also appears to be the same. And our paper gasket for the other side, that also appears to be the same. Just double check everything. Make sure there's no gasket left behind. If so, clean it off. I just usually use a knife to scrape it clean. We'll take and pop out this old screen out of here. Really nothing wrong with it, but come in a kit, so let's replace it. Usually I'll just take something like one of my adjustment screwdrivers or something like that, and I'll just take and push that right down in the hole. Try to get it in there evenly. Which it did not do. Let's try it again. And this particular one, you can push it all the way in there. So the new one's seated in place. Good to go. Make sure you orient your gasket the right way. First time I laid it on there, it was upside down, so I had to flip it over. Most of these have a little alignment tab on here. There we go. Everything's lined up. We could put our little screw back in here. Snug that up. You don't have to get it really tight. It's just plastic. But you got to snug it up a little bit. Especially with this one here in the middle. Let's just kind of hold the two halves together. until you can get the this back onto the carb, and then the other 4 bolts kind of pinch everything together good. All right, that part of it's done. We're going to come in here on the top side of the carburetor, and we're going to remove this little screw here so we can get the needle valve out and arm, and we're going to change those out. So be careful with this. What I like to do is I'll take my thumb and I'll put over that like so. So when I'm loosening up this screw here, and I'll show you why I do that. And I don't take the screw out all the way either. I just give it a few turns out. About 3 turns out roughly. 2-3 turns, whatever it takes to loosen it up but not take it all the way out. And then I can remove my thumb, let it come up easy. And the reason why you want to do this carefully is because underneath that little arm, here's my belly again, is a spring. And if you're not careful, you just start taking stuff apart, that spring can come flying out of there, and you can start losing parts. Not such a big deal because I have a kit to replace it with, but if you were just taking this apart to clean it and putting the same stuff back in it, that could become a problem. All right, so these 2 needle valves, the one on the right is the old one that I took out, and you can see how it looks black. And you'll see a little groove. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see it, but you may see a little groove toward the tip there. So it was starting to get worn, and then the Teflon is gone, or just about gone. If you look at the one on the left side, you'll see it's silver. That's that Teflon coating. So this needle valve here is on its way out. What I like to do is I like to drop the needle valve in first. And then I'll drop my new spring. Drop your new spring in the little spring pocket. The spring pocket is right there. Find something here. The spring pocket is that little spot. Well, I've been bouncing that camera all around. Is that little spot right in the middle there, right there. Just drop your spring into that, and it'll kind of sit there for you. You can take your little arm. That little arm has got a dimple in the middle of it. So on the bottom side of that dimple, there's a little bump. That's where that spring sits. The other end is a fork, and that's what wraps around the end of your needle valve. The end of your needle valve has that little spot right there, and that little fork will slide right onto that, just like so. And I'll take my little shaft here and I'll slide it into the needle valve arm, and I'll set that shaft a little bit of an offset there, so I got most of it sticking out on that side. And all at the same time, I'll set that on the spring, tuck that shaft underneath the screw, and put that fork right underneath the needle valve, all in one little swoop. And then I'll hold that together with my thumb, and I snug up my little screw. And before you release your thumb, you take a double check and make sure that screw is holding that shaft down, or things are going to go flying. These little carburetors can be intimidating because of the small parts and springs and things like that. But just take your time and be careful. Anybody can pretty much do it. After you do that, just take your finger and just kind of make sure everything was working freely like it's supposed to. And then you want to take some sort of straight edge. There is an actual tool that you can buy from the manufacturer. I don't use it. Just little tricks you've learned from someone else. But the needle valve arm, there's an adjustment. It can't be too low and it can't be too high. If it's too low, you won't get enough fuel in. If it's too high, it'll leak all the time because the needle valve will stay open a little bit. But you take a straight edge and you cross it on each side of the carburetor body and run that across there. And basically you want to check to see if it touches. This particular model carburetor, it should be flush. Shouldn't stick up no higher than the carburetor body. Some models will stick down below the body a little bit, and that's when that little manufacturer tool comes in handy. But for the most part, that's all you got. A lot of times the arm will sit in there perfect anyway. Very rarely do you have to make an adjustment to it. But you got to check it. Now, we can take the other half here and we can start loading it up. Put your paper gasket on. Put your diaphragm on. Hold that all together and assemble it. Making sure your little alignment pins line up on the carburetor. That'll help keep the gasket and the diaphragm all where it needs to be. Set your little screws in. And then snug them up. And you don't need to kill them. They're small threads and it's an aluminum. Just snug them up. That's it. So that's how you rebuild a carburetor on a 435 Husqvarna. Some of these parts, like I keep the little rods and arms. Sometimes the arm will get a little wear pattern up here on the end of it, like this one does. It's kind of hard to see it, but it's there. It'll get a little bit of wear at the top there, where it starts to get a little dimple in it. Throw it away. The arms, they very rarely get wear on them. They're stainless steel, so I keep those for backups. And the springs. The springs are usually in pretty good shape. They're usually stainless steel, sometimes they're brass. But I'll keep them too for a backup. And if the arm is good, I'll keep them. Alright. But I don't keep the gaskets and the diaphragms and stuff like that. I just trash all that stuff there.